Hi, the SIWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here. We're now in the early part of February. I thought I'd take a look at the possibilities for the month of February. There are quite a few interesting signals going on around the world that give us some reason to believe that there could be some more cold and perhaps even stormier weather in the mid and latter parts of February after we have a brief break, perhaps 3, 4, 5 days of moderation in temperatures this weekend and the early part of next week. And let's first start off by looking at the very latest sea surface temperature anomaly chart here. The yellows and oranges represent areas of above normal temperatures, such as right here off the west coast of South America, and the blues colder than normal sea surface temperatures. We continue to have kind of a horseshoe-shaped colder than normal pattern here in the northern Pacific. This is very typical of a negative PDO, Pacific Decadal Oscillation. That has been the case for the last several months. It should be the case for the next several months. Cold phase here in the northern Pacific with respect to the Pacific Decadal Oscillation. Meanwhile, another important area we look at is just off the equatorial region, and here's the equator here, the latitude, 0 degree latitude, and we focus on this region here because of El Niños and La Niñas, the shorter term tropical or equatorial Pacific patterns in the Pacific Ocean, because they could have a big effect here in the eastern U.S. in terms of overall wind flow. It's been basically a weak La Nina for the last several weeks, colder than normal, slightly colder than normal. But notice this particular area we started off pointing out here off the west coast of South America, right here, kind of a growing area of above normal temperatures here, and that could be important over the next several weeks, as if indeed a weak El Nino is starting to develop, it could activate the southern part of the jet stream that rolls across the southern part of the U.S., and that could bring about more stormy conditions here in the eastern part of the U.S., perhaps later this month. This is quite a significant change in just the last month in this region. If we take a look here just 1 month ago, notice that region here, lots of blues here that have switched now to this particular pattern here. So we'll continue to monitor this. Perhaps a growing area of above normal temperatures will help to activate the southern branch of the jet stream here in the U.S. Now, another index to look at with respect to El Nino, or the ENSO state, is called the Southern Oscillation Index, the SOI. And when this is negative, it tends to indicate warmer than normal sea surface temperatures in the equatorial Pacific. And over the last few days, this is updated on a daily basis here. There's really been a crash in the SOI values, the Southern Oscillation Index, way down in the negative area. And again, that could be sending us a signal that there's some warming going on just off the west coast of South America, perhaps the beginnings of a weak El Nino. But the significance for us here in the eastern U.S. is perhaps it could signal the activation of the southern branch of the jet stream, which has been largely missing over the last several weeks. We have not had many big storms coming out of the southern part of the U.S., certainly no big storms coming all the way up the east coast, and this is just another signal that we'll have to watch for over the next several days. Well, another tropical oscillation that we kind of focus in on for medium or longer term look at the weather or climate is called the Madden-Julian Oscillation, the MJO, and this is a tropical signal. It's a major fluctuation in tropical weather, basically on weekly or monthly time scales, and it tends to move eastward through the tropics, and it's tracked here by going through different phases. And this is the very latest look at the MJO, and it sometimes gives us an indication of what could go on in the near term or the medium term. Or right now, the different phases that run from 1 to 8, the MJO is currently in phase 8, and there's been a lot of research that indicate that phase 8 or even phase 1 here in the wintertime can lead to colder than normal temperatures here in the eastern part of the U.S. and in some cases stormy conditions here. So this is just yet another signal here in the tropics, this MJO forecast of the particular phase 8 going into phase 1 over the next several days, that things indeed could be cold and perhaps even stormier here in the mid-Atlantic region, the eastern part of the U.S. over the next couple of weeks. We'll take a look now at the temperature, the ramifications on temperatures here for the MJO in these particular phases. And here is phase 8 right here, and this is the current value of the MJO right here in phase 8, which indicates a colder than normal eastern half of the country. Now, if we do indeed move that MJO into phase 1, we'll take a look here up in the upper left. We have still cold pattern here in the eastern part of the U.S. So this is based on a lot of research studies that track this tropical signal, the MJO, and indeed it is showing a signal of colder than normal weather here in the eastern part of the U.S., perhaps in the medium term here. So that's just yet another signal to focus in on over the next several days. Now, what are the GFS and European ensemble runs indicating for the medium and longer range here for the month of February? Well, as I mentioned earlier, we do expect a moderation, a milder trend starting this weekend, perhaps into the early part of next week, maybe on the order of 3, 4, 5 day period of a break in the action after cold weather this week. And this is, in fact, from last night's GFS model run. It's a departure from normals of the temperatures at 850 millibars, lowest part of the atmosphere. This is for the 6 to 10 day period. Greens here are above normal, so you can see we do go through a warming spell before we perhaps get colder again. This is again from last night's GFS model run for the 6 to 10 day outlook for the 850 millibar temperature anomalies. Now, looking ahead, this is the 11 to 15 day temperature anomaly chart from GFS Ensemble. Quite a difference here, basically throughout the country, but especially centered in the plains. It looks like much colder than normal, 11 to 15 days out. Now, what is causing that? Well, let's look at the 500 millibar anomaly chart. Well, here is indeed the GFS Ensemble 500 millibar height anomalies for the 11 to 15 day period, and this again is an indication, certainly a signal, that there can be some colder weather coming for the middle and latter part of the month of February after that 4 or 5 day warm up. This is showing a few interesting things here. First of all, high pressure basically from here all the way across Greenland, and we often talk about a blocking pattern that could set up over Greenland, and that's what this is indicating, the possibility of a blocking pattern setting up later on this month. We really haven't had a significant, long-lasting blocking pattern over Greenland that forces the cold air to kind of stay down into the eastern and central part of the U.S. But this 11 to 15 day GFS Ensemble run is certainly indicating kind of a large-scale trough here in the U.S. with much colder than normal temperatures here in the plains, and cold pretty much from coast to coast, and high pressure ridging along the west coast that helps to pull in that colder air from way up there over the North Pole, and kind of a large scale banana shaped high pressure keeping the cold air entrenched here in the U.S. as this blocking pattern sets up here, perhaps, at least according to the GFS Ensemble run, over Greenland later on this month. Now, is there confirmation of this potential blocking setting up with the European Ensemble run? Well, indeed, this is the European Ensemble run from last night for the 500 millibar height anomalies for 10 days out, and it too has kind of a large-scale high-pressure area here over the west coast of the U.S. and over Greenland. Again, right here is Greenland and a potential blocking pattern here. This is, again, the European Ensemble run with cold pattern here setting up with a deep trough over the center part of the nation, much colder than normal in the plains, and pretty much, again, cold for the interior two-thirds of the nation, if indeed this comes true. So certainly are some signals here in the models that the mid and latter part of the month of February could stay cold and perhaps even get stormier as that SOI value crashing continues to indicate some warming in the equatorial Pacific. Now, if indeed blocking does set up here over the Greenland area, we ought to see some kind of reflection in the Arctic Oscillation and the North Atlantic Oscillation. In fact, let's take a look at the AO forecast. And here's the Arctic Oscillation forecast. Right now, it's positive. It's certainly positive, but there are some model trends here downward, and even some that crash the AO over the next several days. This is out into the middle part of February. Right here is middle part of February, right? So we'll continue to track this to see if the AO tends to tank here over the next several days, but quite a few signals here from the tropics all the way down into the North Atlantic that indicate winter may not be over, as Phil has suggested, with an early spring forecast. At least it's looking like there are some possibilities for cold and stormy weather in the mid and latter part of February. We'll continue to monitor all of that here at the SIweather.com. That's it for now. I'm the SI meteorologist, Paul Dorian.